Since the dawn of man, there has been hierarchies. Whether it's father and son, master and student, or big strong alpha male and little beta cuck soy boy, the need for one to dominate another has sort of been this whole big thing that people have given a really massive shit about. And there's no bigger example of how some people are objectively more worthy of our Lord Jesus' love than that of the royal family. But wait, hold on, what is the royal family, I hear you ask? I hate you for asking that, but since you've got the time and I've got a microphone, let's get into it. The royal family is a ruddy, complicated old thing. It started probably with a Frenchman called William le Conquereur. And what he did was he came over here and he just started cutting the absolute heads off a shitload of people. He deposed, and by that we mean murdered, the then King Harold Godwinson, otherwise known as Harold II, at the Battle of Hastings. He captured the crown and, in doing so, royally fucked over the House of Wessex. His descendants then passed the crown through all of his spawn, which led right down to the House of Hanover with Queen Victoria. Now, this is where the modern royal family, as we all know it, began. In 1917, an effort to fight back the growing tides of resentment towards the royal family was begun. Gary V's granddad, King George V, ordered the royal family abandon their German names for that of Windsor. George also made efforts himself to visit and survey the troops on the Western Front, and it was one of these trips to France that saw him fall off horse and break his pelvis. Just another nasty accident. People fall off horses all the time. So now we know where the royal family began. Let's take a look at some of the gigantic members in all of their gold-laden, jewel-encrusted glory. The big dog in the house is of course Liz II, the longest-serving monarch in history, an all-round decent bird. She was born in 1926 and was crowned queen at the tender age of 25. Now I know what you're thinking, a fancy new hat and no surcharges on rentals in the same year. Lucky cow. Now look, for all of the issues I have with the royal family, I'm happy to admit that perhaps Queen Elizabeth II is likely to be the best iteration of what a monarch might look like. Sure, there are some issues lately that have thrown some shade on her otherwise polished record, like funding a millionaire alleged nonsense legal fees. And come to think of it, there was that time that she was photographed posing with the corpse of a now endangered tiger that was slaughtered by her husband on a royal hunt as well. And yeah, people might also be tempted to bring up the picture of her as a child performing a Nazi salute, but don't worry, I'm not the kind of guy that would call her a Nazi for that. Her Uncle Ed was the Nazi, obviously. But all in all, she's still a few scandals away from being King Joffrey. So now we've got that out of the way, let's take a look at the rest of the diamond-encrusted bumspuds. The now deceased Prince Philip was the Queen's hubby. He died in 2021 at the age of presumably 400 and was the longest serving consort in the history of the monarchy. His role was to support the Queen in her duties, presumably asking Aboriginal leaders if they still throw spears at one another was some dutiful research on his part. So too was telling the President of Nigeria that he looked ready for bed because he was wearing traditional robes. There's not really much that I can say about Prince Philip, except that the loyalists prefer to look at him as a bit of a cuddly, ill-informed but well-meaning old school guy, rather than, him just being a bit of a racist, sexist, dopey bastard. Next up, we've got homeopath-loving, Diana-divorcing, wealth-smuggling Prince Charles. This guy is perhaps most famous for being married to, and later divorcing from, the late Princess Diana. At the grand age of 73, Charles has had plenty of chances to make himself look like an absolute space cadet. Whether it's being an advocate for the use of homeopathic medicine in the NHS, or being exposed by the Paradise Papers as one of the ultra-wealthy that was hiding money offshore, it's easy to see why this man was ranked 6th on the most popular Royals YouGov poll of Q1 2022. Charles has often given us peasants the impression that the royal family are almost human in their ability to make themselves look like absolute smegheads. And speaking of Charles's smeg, that leads us nicely onto William and Harry. Arguably the most famous royals of our time, these two brothers have captured the heart of the nation. Whether they're breaking with royal protocol to allow the filthy commoners to touch them, or doing King Edward VIII proud by dressing up as a literal Nazi, Harry and William have redefined what it means to be objectively more important than anyone you've ever known or loved. Now, while William has gone on a more traditional path as the second in line to the throne, Harry has a different story. Not being weighed down by the pressure of the crown, he went on to marry Meghan Markle, an American actress. While the British public scolded at the thought of Harry introducing an American into the royal family, the royals themselves were more concerned about the idea of introducing the brown ones and the implications of not having an entirely porcelain royal family. And I've got to say, valid point. I mean, take a look at these god-tier genetics and tell me you would be okay with introducing the likes of her to the royal family. Blech. Anyway, these sorts of elitism and blatant, proper, actual racism caused Harry to formally step down as a member of the royal family in 2021. He cites the press's treatment of Meghan, along with the treatment of her by his own family, as a reason to hop, skip and jump across the pond to GTFO and to try and live a happy, healthy life with his family. As you can imagine, Piers Morgan fucking hated that. Incidentally, it caused him to go on a scathing tirade against Meghan, which, in turn, got him fired from his long-standing position on Good Morning Britain. Shame. Now that we've warmed up, and I've taken you on a brief tour of the cute quirks that make the royal family so loved by many of us, let's get serious. Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew has made some strange life choices, so forgive me if you're already familiar with the situation, but I just wanted to talk about this one a little bit more. So, way back in December of 2014, a court filing in Florida alleged that Prince Andrew was one of the scumbags who participated in sex acts with a minor that were trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein. The victim alleged that they had sex on 3 occasions, and flight logs found that they were indeed located in the same places at the same time that she alleges the acts occurred. She was 17 at the time the now famous picture was taken, with Andrew's arm around her waist and Ghislaine Maxwell looming ominously in the background. And Ghislaine has coincidentally now been charged with sex trafficking a minor, along with 4 more charges in relation to the Epstein scandal. Now I know what you're thinking. My broski, my brother in Christ, my Bacardi Breezer, fridge freezer, lemon squeezer, geezer. He must have had a solid defence, right? The multi-millionaire, totally innocent man of royalty and son to the Queen herself must have been able to provide an adequate defence. Right? Absolutely. You see, it's all quite easily explained because, in spite of all testimony, he remembers that he couldn't possibly have been able to sweat, as the victim recalls, because he's such a fucking war hero. He stated that he had a peculiar medical condition that prohibited sweat excretion due to an overdose of adrenaline after being shot at during the Falklands War. He also remembers that he couldn't have been at the party on the night in question because he was in Pizza Express in Woking. You know, the thing that would be totally reasonable to remember that happened 19 years ago. It should also be noted that Prince Andrew has agreed to pay an out-of-court settlement on the case, with rumours circulating that the settlement was in the region of $7 to $12 million. Although the British public are being assured that no public money will be used towards the settlement, there are rumours that the Queen may assist with her private funds. You know, the money she makes selling fake Yeezys on eBay that definitely isn't from being a paid-for head of state. Again, not to beat a dead Epstein, but it seems to me like the more I stare, the more I realise that the royals are looking more and more similar to humans every day. They have faces, skin, and some of them even have functioning sweat glands. Now, I know that in order to give them a fair shake, I should try to encapsulate why some believe that despite the controversies, the royal family is worth keeping. So let's get into that. Some believe that the royal family is an important head of state for the UK and that it unifies the people. Now, don't get me wrong, the idea of Boris being our head of state makes me want to piss my own arse out of my eyeballs. But this argument almost immediately has the rug pulled from under it when you realise that support for the royal family has dwindled to just 31% amongst 18 to 24-year-olds and 53% for those between the ages of 25 and 49. That's a significant drop from previous generations. Others might cite that countries with monarchies are less corrupt. I'd do well to point you in the direction of literally everything that I've said up until now to show you that the royals are about as capable of being corrupt as an infected anus is of being fucking minging. Oh, but what about the economy? I hear you scream in your gentrified mouth speak. The arguments here range from how the royals encourage a £500 million plus tourism industry, to royals like Kate wearing designer brands that pumps hundreds of millions of pounds into their respective industries just from wearing the clothes. Now, while this might be tempting to believe, I call horseshit. Firstly, it's impossible to really quantify how much the active, living royal family themselves bring in from tourism. I would argue that tourism is more so dependent on the history of the estates and the culture surrounding the royal family since its inception, rather than the idea that people will travel from all over the world just to cop a glance of Liz picking up her scratchers down the co-op. And even if the royals made the country a profit from their activities, it doesn't come close to scratching the moral argument that it's abhorrent to prop up a family using state funds to live lives of luxury clad in gold and silk just because of their bloodline. I believe that, hypothetically, you replace the royal family with those annoying fucking neighbours that put their washing machines on a 1200 spin at 10 PM when you need to be up early in the fucking morning, you'd have a bit more of an issue with the idea of basing royalty on who cut whose head off 1,000 years ago. I mean, for fuck's sake, Prince Andrew is still living in a royal residence to this day. So, where am I going with all of this? I don't know, mate. It's just mad, isn't it? That was just my short story and somewhat unhinged rant on and of the royal family. If you like this video, please press like so you can prove to YouTube that you like it, please. This was also my first ever video, and it would be hugely motivating for me to do more. Also, feel free to leave a comment to let me know what else you would like me to cover. Bye bye, guys. Love you. Bye bye. Bye. Bye bye. Yeah, okay. Bye. Bye bye bye. Okay, bye. Love you. Bye.